I am Ace the Hitman, and I approve this message.
Today it is very interesting.
See.
The world is changing.
And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
Adolf Hitler once said, the best way to take control over a people is to take a little of their freedom at a time, to erode rights by 1,000 tiny and almost imperceptible reductions. And this way the people will not see those rights and freedoms being removed until past the point at which these changes cannot be reversed.
Cases surging and deaths now 5 times higher than just a month ago, President Biden is requiring tens of millions more Americans to get vaccinated.
Their patience is wearing thin. And the refusal has cost all of us. This is not about freedom or personal choice. This is not about freedom or personal choice.
The matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church.
Officials are telling people that whether they are vaccinated or not, they're not allowed to go to church.
In the name of Jesus.
$5,000. Each of these 30 adult worshippers fined $1,000.
Whether it's a soccer match, whether it's a church service, it doesn't matter. You cannot gather as they did at Blacktown.
When you pay your taxes, it is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from
shocking. It's written about in the book of Revelation. Could it ever happen? The answer is, unfortunately, yes. Total population control. Benny says that's what the National Security Agency wants. He should know. He was technical director of that agency and worked there for more than 30 years. You said that the ultimate goal is total population control. In a democracy, that is really scary business.
It's actually a totalitarian process. It's actually a totalitarian process.
If you sum up the CO2 that gets emitted, that leads to a temperature increase.
Longing is the music of our sphere. The gift of life is never more or less. It starts at any time you like and ends in just a wink. Pass me the light, baby.
Temperature increase leads to some very negative effects. The effects on the weather, perhaps worse, the indirect effects in that the natural ecosystems can't adjust to these rapid changes, so you get ecosystem collapses. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to 0, and that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to 0. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to 0. Now that's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we can lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we see an increase of about 1.3.
single death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic.
Mr. Chairman, let me just, for the record, just run down the line here. Each of you believe that the virus started in the lab in Wuhan, China.
I would say only
Forever is
that if some of my judgments were wrong,
shorter than
and some were wrong.
Okay, and each of you believe that, by definition, if it starts in the lab, it's man-made, it's engineered.
Our enemies are innovative and resourceful. And so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people, and neither do we.
Okay. It's very unlikely this was found in nature, but there is a scenario that it could have been collected in nature and then brought to a population center of 11 million, which is kind of crazy.
Dictators, states, that's what they want to do. They want to know everything about the population so they can control it.
What truth? That you are a slave now.
Phone call or email anybody on the internet or do chatter on the internet, that can be monitored in near real time. It provides the opportunity to monitor everybody in the country, in fact, most everybody in the world, in near real time throughout the day. And that's really a 1984 on steroids, really.
Question, how people live in a pandemic like coronavirus?
Catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it's like this. If any deal will kill 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely a highly infectious virus.
is the music of our sphere.
Now, part of the reason for this is that we've invested a huge amount
is never
in
more or
nuclear
less.
deterrence. We've actually invested very little in a system to stop an epidemic. We're not ready for the next epidemic. Given, as you heard from the introduction, that I have been around for a while and have had the opportunity and the privilege and the pleasure of serving in 5 administrations, I thought I would bring that perspective to the topic today, is the issue of pandemic preparedness. And if there's one message that I want to leave with you today, based on my experience, and you'll see that in a moment, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak. And I hope by the end of my relatively short presentation you will understand why the history of the last 32 years that I've been the director of NIAID will tell the next administration that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that they will be faced with the challenges that their predecessors were faced with. But also there will be a surprise outbreak.
Why does the government keep on doing it?
That's the reason I've been able to, at least from what I can see in the public domain, is they're doing it for law enforcement worldwide. And actually, the main users of this data are, in fact, the FBI and the Drug Enforcement Administration.
Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison.
Which is kind of crazy, and then accidentally leaked. It could also have been, when you say man-made, it could have been naturally evolved, which is what was suggested earlier. So it wasn't like humans putting pieces together, but allow the virus to do the virus. Which do you think is more likely, the humans engineering it or what you just described? I think more likely is this was, and again, this is speculation, but I think more likely it was evolved by passage either in human cells or by, quote, humanized mice.
Gee, mate, what do you want to do tonight?
Mice to have a very virulent pathogen, at least the majority of which, but it's still the same thing, okay? Whether I used a genetic tool or whether I evolved it in nature or maybe did a little bit of both, as might have been suggested, it's still a lab.
Either one of those routes is still considered gain-of-function research.
Yes.
Listen very closely, my friends. These evil masterminds are geniuses, if you may. If you tell a big enough lie, tell it frequently enough, it will be believed.
We'll support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan. Dr. Fauci, Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute. Do they fund Dr. Barrick? We do not fund. We fund Dr. Barrick's gain-of-function research. Dr. Barrett does not doing gain-of-function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina.
In early 2020, the medical journal The Lancet published a letter from a group of scientists saying the lab leak was a conspiracy. The man behind the letter was Peter Daszak. He's the president of EcoHealth Alliance, and he'd been working with the Wuhan Institute of Virology for 15 years, sending US grant money to Wuhan for bat research.
I don't think inserting a bat virus spike protein that he got from the Wuhan Institute into the SARS virus is gain of function. That is not a minority because at least 200 scientists have signed a statement from the Cambridge Working Group saying that it is gain of function. Well, it is not.
Yes. Well, yes. If you're passaging it to gain of function, yes. Or you're engineering it to gain of function.
Okay.
That's gain of function.
Just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
He's the absolute expert on foreign coronaviruses in the United States and their epidemiology, and that he assures us that the Chinese had provided him personally with the proof to make it clear that this had come out of nature. But when we asked for this proof, when we asked the government agencies that had funded the work of EcoHealth and others, they couldn't give us that proof because they didn't have that proof. We looked at what certain scientists were saying, matching it with intelligence, and when it didn't match up, we were questioning it. But then as we looked more closely at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, what a lot of scientists like Dr. Fauci and Peter Daszak were saying was, there's no live bats there, there's no gain-of-function research there, there's no military there, and we had intelligence that was telling us that all of those things were occurring there.
I don't think inserting a bat virus spike protein that he got from the Wuhan Institute into the SARS virus is gain of function. That is not a minority because at least 200 scientists have signed a statement from the Cambridge Working Group saying that it is gain of function. Well, it is not. And if you look at the grant and you look at the progress reports, it is not gain of function, despite the fact.
Majority of which, but it's still the same thing, okay?
Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Forever is the strangest thing. It's shorter than you think. No think.